The Burgess Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation empowers students to learn through action by providing campus-wide programs, courses, and resources to test ideas, foster an entrepreneurial mindset, develop empathy, and create new ventures. Learn more at eship.msu.edu.
This episode of the Hatchcast is brought to you by the MSU Entrepreneurship Association. The MSU EA is a registered student organization open to all majors who are passionate about entrepreneurship. Find out more at msuea.org.
Hi, Aubrey Haas, Events and Project Coordinator, back with this week's event segment. It's been a crazy week, and I know that our stamina is very low while we await the results of the presidential election. If you're looking for something to tune into that's fully news-free to distract yourself and maintain your sanity, we have a few opportunities for you. This weekend, our students are gearing up to participate in Startup Weekend. On Saturday evening, starting at 6 p.m., you can tune in on Facebook Live at facebook.com/MSU Burgess Institute to watch the ideas that our students worked on for 30 hours to create a fully viable business concept. You can also gear up to tune in to our next Innovate State session with Michelle Green and John Rood on November 18th at 6 p.m. Innovate State is a great opportunity to learn about the journey of many Spartanpreneur alumni and listen to their experiences. You can grab a blanket, your blue light glasses, a snack, and turn off the news to tune in. You can also listen to our previous Innovate State conversations this semester and listen on vimeo.com/MSU Burgess for exclusive interview content. This week is hard, so prioritize your mental health. Turn off social media, go for a walk, and remember to drink water. You're doing great, and no other generation has done what you're accomplishing today by going through the biggest election of our lifetime and going through college 100% virtually through a pandemic. You're incredible, and at the Burgess Institute, we are so proud of you. If you need help, please reach out to MSU Counseling and Psychiatric Services at 517-355-8270. We'll get through this together. I'll see you next time.
Before we get started here, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Chris Sell. I'm with the Burgess Institute for Entrepreneurship Innovation here at Michigan State University. And I'd like to welcome you to our next Innovate State of the fall 2020 semester. Super excited for tonight's guest. Not only is he an accomplished entrepreneur and alumnus of Michigan State, but he's also an entrepreneur in residence with the Burgess Institute. So we could probably get to that later tonight during our more in-depth part of the conversation. But very excited about tonight's program. Before we get started with that, I just want to give a few quick commercials for upcoming programming with the Burgess Institute. If you're not already following us on social media, please make sure you're doing that because it's the best way to get the quickest information and most up-to-date information about what we're doing and how you can get involved. You can follow us at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And you can also make sure you're subscribed to our weekly newsletter, the Burgess eShip Weekly, by going to eship.msu.edu. Again, that's eship.msu.edu. It's where you can find all things related to entrepreneurship at Michigan State for our community of entrepreneurs. I also want to make sure that you're familiar with some of the upcoming programming we've got. The Burgess Institute is thrilled to be hosting 4 different startup weekends this year at Michigan State. The experience is completely virtual this year, which allows students and participants to experience the program from wherever they are, as long as they have an internet connection and a laptop or computer. And it also allows us to Zoom in alumni and friends of MSU from across the country, really, who can be mentors for the participants in the program. It's an opportunity to take an idea from conception to pitching a business within a day and a half. Super fun. one of the best programs that we offer. Our next one's actually this weekend. And then we've got 2 more in the spring semester, both in February as well as April 2021. And it's really low cost, high reward opportunity to get involved. And I will tell you, some of the best student ventures that have come out of the Burgess Institute can totally find their genesis at a startup weekend in years past. So make sure and check it out if you haven't already. It's a super dynamic, fun experience to get involved with. In addition to that, please mark your calendars for our next Innovate State coming up here in just a few short weeks. We pride ourselves in hosting Innovate State almost every other week throughout this fall and spring semesters, always guaranteed to Zoom in really accomplished alumni and entrepreneurs from across the country to share their entrepreneurial story in a fireside chat format like we've got tonight. So make sure and get this on your calendar for the rest of the fall and into the spring 21 semester if you haven't already. Lastly, I'll just remind you that the Burgess Institute is here to support students, no matter if you are looking to create a company or if you want to get involved in coursework and learn the mindset of an entrepreneur. And again, if you're interested in getting more involved, student organizations, programs, events, you can find all that information at eship.msu.edu. I'll lastly point out that we want to thank our sponsors for tonight's program. So that includes the MSU Innovation Center, the MSU Foundation, and the MSU Alumni Office, partnering with the Burgess Institute to make sure that Innovate State's possible. So thanks again to all of them for the support and partnership in making this thing happen. I think with that, I want to go ahead and introduce my colleague, Paul Jakes, the Managing Director for Student Venture Creation at the Burgess Institute for Entrepreneurship Innovation. Paul will be moderating tonight's conversation. We'll be introducing us to, again, our esteemed guests here in a few short moments. So without further ado, Paul, take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Thanks for everything. Yes, tonight we have an amazing guest, an alumni, Curtis Daniel III. Curtis, thank you so much for joining us. Not only amazing an alum, but one of our 5 entrepreneurs in residence this year. If you don't know what that is, he's basically meeting with our students weekly on our discovery and validation program, and then meeting with them on the outside to try to get their ideas more out to market. So Curtis, thanks for joining us during this crazy year, this crazy week. We're not going to go into that, but we did have a big win this weekend, so we'll take that. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Well, one thing we always like to start out with everybody is just talking about where you grew up, why MSU, and then maybe if you can think about just that first day or the first time you came here. If you can talk about that.
Yeah, so me, I'm from I mean, you know, if you're not from California, you would say I'm from LA. So LA is the county, but more specifically, I'm from a place called Carson, California, which is in Southern California. And, you know, we had a powerhouse football team back in the days. And I got recruited. I don't know how I ended up there. I think our counselor went to Eastern Michigan, and we had the type of program that all the schools came to visit. And so one of the guys that was recruiting from Michigan State visited our high school. So I came, you know, to play football, came on a football scholarship. And I was a little bit naive. I mean, probably like, you know, younger people are now. I mean, growing up in California, we never worried about the weather. And I can say with all honesty, in my senior year, I had one pair of long pair of pants, man. I never wear a long pair of pants to school. And I had some misconceptions about Michigan. You know, it was my first time ever seeing my breath that came out of my mouth. And I can honestly say with a straight face, I thought we wasn't going to have to go to school when it snowed. And I remember the first time they predicted it was going to snow the next day, I stayed up all night, man, looking out the window. I was staying over in Wilson Hall, and everybody there was tripping on me because I stayed up all night. And it was like, "You gonna be tired?" I'm like, "It's snowing, man. We ain't gonna have school." And that wasn't the case, man. So I came there again, you know, to play football and for a football scholarship. And then I ended up building relationships. Some of my best friends are my college teammates and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think I got when I'm a little bit older, y'all know from this conversation, I'm brutally honest. Now that I'm older, I think that my college counselor must have got paid to send me to Michigan State, man. So that's how I ended up there. And I tried to transfer, man. I tried to leave and go to Oregon. And the people on campus now, you guys are on quarters. When I first got there, I'm sorry, you guys on semesters. When we first got there, we were on quarters. And it wasn't really enjoyable as a football player because we had played 2 games before the students came on campus. And they found out I tried to transfer because the NCAA rules made the Oregon coaches call our coach. And Perlis called a meeting with my mom on the phone, and they convinced me that if I would wait until the students got on campus and if I still didn't like it after the first quarter, they would let me go. And once the girls from Detroit and Flint came to Michigan State, I was hooked. So I just stayed.
Well, we're glad the Ducks didn't steal you. So
yeah,
appreciate that. So how was that transition going from West Coast to Midwest? Was that I mean, not only football, but was it odd, different with people, different with groups? How was it?
Yeah, we, like I keep saying, man, they the coaches used to get on me. And I remember one summer I was going back home, and we had finished running, doing all our tests, and I always made all my drills, lifted all the weights, did everything. And I remember 2 of our coaches, our receivers coach and our running back coach, pulled me over. I remember I was in the back of the weave in the end zone, and it was like, man, we need you to go to California and come back without that California attitude. We need you to act like you care about some stuff. Then they start asking like, man, are you on drugs? Are you, because we be yelling at you and you don't care. So my mentality and attitude really was like a person from California, where it was kind of carefree. And so it wasn't really a lot of stuff that I was worried about. I mean, I didn't, if I would have worried about a lot of stuff, I probably wouldn't have went. I didn't think about the fact that I didn't have any family or relatives in Michigan. I didn't know anybody or anyone that played on the team. I wasn't familiar with the Big Ten Conference, and I damn sure didn't know about that weather. And so, the mentality was, it was weird, man, just coming from LA. Like, we have so many different, from where I'm from Carson, there's Samoans, there's Filipinos, there's Asian, there's Hispanic, there's Black, there's white, Portuguese. And with all those different type of people comes different types of food. And when I got to Michigan State, man, them dudes didn't even eat Chinese food or Mexican food. And so it was a whole bunch of things. And then in LA, what I was missing is that in LA, we have a whole bunch of independently owned restaurants. And in Michigan, all it is the big boxes that are national or whatever. So it was definitely different. And, and it was different. I couldn't understand why people had, different jackets. Like, I mean, my roommate would literally send a box of clothes home and bring a spring jacket. And I never understood what a spring jacket was. And then it was a fall jacket and a winter jacket. And then they would change their rims on the cars in the winter. And I never understood, the salt rusted stuff out. So it was a lot of stuff.
Chains on the tires.
Yeah. Well, I thought that's what they was going to do. I thought they was going to put chains on it. They never did that. And, so I was blessed. Like, they ended up, because they were so worried about me, they put me with Mill Coleman, Mill the Thrill, who was from Farmington. He was a valedictorian, and he had a strong family. So his parents pretty much kind of like adopted me. And my parents been married now for about 51 years. And I have 2 brothers and a sister. So it was weird for me not to ever have anyone at the game. Like, my parents never came to Michigan State till I graduated. And so you go from a person who's used to having your whole family at all your games and your sisters and your brothers to, when I graduated, people was like, you look funny with a family. Like, they never could picture me with a family. So it was definitely an adjustment. And I think the best advice I got when I was deciding on where I was going to go was a guy that played at my high school, and he went to UCLA. And he just told me that, man, if you have an opportunity to leave, just leave. You can always come back. And when you come back, all these people standing on the corner still going to be here. So I try to encourage young people to kind of, get out there and leave. And it definitely forced me to grow up. I couldn't go home for, my first year. My parents paid for me to come home all the time. And then the longer you get in school, they start paying for the Christmas only, maybe only the summer. And then by the 3rd year, man, you on your own. Right. So it forced me to grow up.
And you said this was during George Perlis. George Perlis was a coach there, one of our great board members. And I know he recently passed not too long.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff Perlis couldn't coach right now because he wasn't politically correct.
Different
some,
time.
some of the stuff they was doing, these kids wouldn't make it. But yeah, GP was our coach, man.
That's great. So, okay, let's go. You're in school, and did you pick out a major right away, or what did you get into?
You know what? What was weird was I remember when we were there, and I remember my suite mate. He was from Lansing, and I remember he came in and he was saying that he was doing like a construction engineering major, and then Mill had a major, and I didn't have any concept of what that was, and so like I always say, I'm pretty good of kind of like I always like to go into a room and listen before I open my mouth, and so I found out that hey, you don't have to declare. And most of the time when people come in declaring right off the bat, they end up changing anyway. And so I took the approach that, well, if I got 2 years, like we all got to take these general ed classes anyway, let me take some of these general ed classes. And then probably about after my first year, I kind of knew that I was going to do either communications or psychology. And psychology didn't have as much math, man. And so I leaned towards that. But then what really happened is like I really was understanding and comprehending when I would go to my psychology classes. The communication was holding my attention, but the psychology and understanding why and how people did things really caught my attention. And so I went with that. I mean, it drew me in. I was always interested in that, and I'm still interested to this day. So at the end of my second year, I went on and declared for psychology. And if I would have took a couple other classes, I could have got a minor in communications, but I didn't.
So in psychology, what were you thinking? Were you thinking a career in that? Or what were you sophomore, junior year, you start thinking about what you're going to do after graduation? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, what's interesting is, when you're on a football scholarship, you basically get 5 years to play for. And my first year, I had knee surgery, so I didn't play, so I redshirted, so I still had 4 years left. Me and my roommate, me and Mill. And Mill, after 4 years, he graduated and he had a year left of eligibility. So Perlis really wasn't tripping. They went on and signed his scholarship. I don't know if people don't know that our scholarships we have to sign them every year. So they're not guaranteed. They're like year to year. So we go into the meetings at the end of the year, and Perlis signed his scholarship, told him he can come back and we pay for your first year of grad school, no problem. And when I went in there, he cussed me out, literally cussed me out and threw me out and told me, I'm not paying for your last year. And I was like, well, what about Mill? And he just went off on me. Don't bring him up. Mill's a good guy. You using us. We've already paid for this. And my point to him was, well, when you guys recruited me, you guys told me that if I ever get injured, you guys would honor my scholarship just like I didn't get injured. And I said, so now you guys are trying to punish me because I got hurt. I said, both of us came in together. Both of us did good enough to finish in 4 years. We got a year left. You paying for him to go to school, but you don't want to pay for me. So I ended up having to go talk to the AD. And the only way I got my 5th year paid for is I dropped one of my mandatory classes that I need to graduate. And I didn't graduate on purpose. And it forced them to have to pay for my 5th year. So my 5th year, I took some 900 level psychology grad courses. And my plan was I wanted to do industrial organizational psychology. And so my thing was like I was into business and entrepreneurship, but I was really into psychology, trying to get the understanding. And when I read up on it and found out that there was basically psychology for the businesses, I knew what I wanted to do. And as opposed to sitting doing counseling, I wanted to kind of be inside of a business and trying to figure out things. And so my plan was to, it's funny, I took all those classes. I went to the classes, I did all the writing and all the assignments, and then I never took the final. And my teachers begged for me to do it, but I told them I was moving to Atlanta and we was getting in the music industry and I don't need that part. And so we were in grad classes, it's only about 8 to 10 people. So you're really close with the professors. So none of them would fail me. They all gave me incompletes. And I said, look, man, I've been doing what I've been having to do my whole life. I want to take 2 years off and try to chase this dream. And if it don't work, then I'll come back up here and finish. So they gave me incompletes. I think I had about a year or so to kind of do it, but I never went back. It worked out for me. And then, later on, I wanted to do it. and I wouldn't took a GRE. But see, at Michigan State, because I had did undergrad there, I wouldn't have had to take the GRE, and I had already took the 900 level classes. I could have got into my grad school, but here at Georgia Tech, they wasn't having that, man. And I couldn't, I had lost my edge. When I went in and did the GRE prep, it was like the teacher was speaking Spanish. So I figured I better make this music industry thing work. So that was my plan. That was literally, like I tell people, in order to get a Big Ten scholarship, you have to do a whole bunch of stuff. You have to lift weights, you have to run, you got to be in condition, you got to play good, you got to make. So I just really felt like my whole life I was doing what I had to do. And I just was like, man, I just want to take 2 years to chase a dream. And that's what I did.
So talk about that. And this is one of the questions that just came up by one of the attendees, and I'll add into this. How'd you get in? I mean, you talked about family in California. I didn't know if you were thinking about going back to California, but Atlanta, how did that come up? How did you get into the music?
Yeah, so me, I kind of operate on themes. Like I was reading I think they interviewed me, Jack Eveling, for the Lansing State Journal when I got there, because I was the first kid from California that Perlis had recruited. And they asked me what were my goals. And I was like, to be a businessman and never move back home. And so my thinking was that if I never moved home, I must be doing something successful where I don't have to move back in with my parents. But I ended up in Atlanta. Like I said, I think every holiday when you're a freshman, your parents miss you and they send for you to come home. And then by my second year, instead of Christmas, spring break, in the summer, maybe they paid for me to come home, for Christmas. And I remember that year, man, they made me take the bus, the Greyhound, man, from East Lansing to LA.
That's a ride. How long was that?
Man, I told my parents, if I got to ride that bus back, I ain't going back to school. And somebody helped me out, an alumni helped me out and bought me a ticket to come back to Michigan State. I told him I would pay him back. It literally probably took me to about 9 years after I graduated. I wrote him a check and paid him back. He was a dear friend of mine. He passed away. But, I got to Atlanta because one of my friends, he graduated a year before me, Bob Whitfield. He got a scholarship to Stanford. And in high school, he was a #1 rated lineman in the nation. So he was highly recruited, and he played as a true freshman. He was only about 17. So by the time he graduated, he was the 7th player drafted in the NFL, and he became the highest paid lineman in NFL history. And he got drafted by the Falcons. And so since my parents wasn't giving me any money to come home to California, we used to drive down to Atlanta for the Freaknik and spring break and stuff like that. And so by him being here in Atlanta, that's how I ended up here. One of our other friends in California from the neighborhood we're from was called the Patch. His name was Razkaz. He was a rapper. He was rapping, and Bob had a whole bunch of money, and I thought Raz was dope. So I convinced Bob to send him some equipment so he can cut a demo. And we thought that if we cut a demo on him, we would get a record deal. And it didn't work like that. So nobody wanted to sign them. So we just decided to form our own record label and put the record out ourselves. And then it created a bidding war. And then that's what led to us starting a label. And then once we spent over $200,000 making this first project, we realized we could have had our own studio and built the label for that. So we ended up building a studio. And so that's how I ended up here in Atlanta. You know what I mean?
Well, how did you, and this goes into the question that's here, is like, how did you know anything? Because the students now, they got the Burgess Institute, they got many of the things that know about startups or entrepreneurship. How did you know anything about starting a business or getting into that, or did you have others to help you? How'd you use that?
No, so it was another gentleman that was running a record label out of LA, but he graduated with Bob the year before me. But, one of the things that I hire all the people that work at the studio pretty much we only kind of got a couple positions. We got admin people that work at the front desk and engineers. All of our engineers are required to have went to a school for audio engineering and graduated, not just went to a school. And then all the people that work at the front desk, I usually go after people that are in college, in school. And I think that school, it demonstrates to me that you're capable of learning. I mean, not just reading, but comprehension and applying what you learn. And so I was always good at comprehending what I read and being able to apply it. So for me, I'm kind of like the connector for our football program. I've been throwing a party up there the last 10 years called a Spartan Dog Dinner. Or I rent out a room at the Kellogg Center, a ballroom, and throw a party and bring all the guys back, right? So I'm the one that kind of hold us together, but I'm also the one that translates, is what I say. So it's true. We do have some football players. I'll give you an example. You know, when we used to have to go away to the road game, Perlis would say, all right, you guys, you need to get you a sports jacket, you know, to wear on the bus to travel. And one of the homies from Lima came in there with a starter jacket because he thought it was a sports jacket. And we had people on the team who had never eaten steak. We had people on the team that I remember the hotel was complaining because they had the beds were on the floor. And Perlis was like, what's the problem? Dude was like, man, where I grew up, we never had box springs. So I wasn't comfortable with sleeping with the bed. So we had people who weren't the brightest people. And then we had people that were super bright, but they weren't really cool and they didn't really connect. I kind of sat in the middle where, you know, I'm running with the little knuckleheads, but I can read and comprehend. And so I always said I'm a good translator. So I just basically figured out, like, you know, like I went out and I tried to talk to somebody who owned a studio and they didn't want to help us, which was a blessing. So it forced me to pick up a book and read. And so I literally just read the book on, you know, what forms you need and how to do it. And then our biggest blessing, our you know, people may know, but they're a little bit younger, but our first client was Outkast. And the lady that was running the organization is the one that kind of helped me a lot. She basically kind of told me what the studios in LA and New York, what they had. And they were patient with us where we put all that stuff in place. But all the stuff that I got is like still to this day, you know, I try to be the source of it. I mean, the source is a book. Somebody did it before me, but I read it and then I apply it. So I did the same thing when we started. I literally had to figure it out. I had no idea what a studio was, what to charge, what equipment we needed and stuff like that, and just had to figure it out. You know what I mean? And that's the blessing that, like what I tell people now, I work with, we got a mentorship program with our football team. So I got the dude that caught all them passes, you know, he's from Georgia, so he's underneath me, and another dude. So I got all the Georgia kids, and when they come out, what I tell people in college is, you know, college, the biggest thing that you're going to deal with when you finish is the crunch of time. You're under pressure once you graduate. The clock starts ticking. And so, you know, I got a guy out here now that played a few years ago, and I'm like, he just moved here this week, and I'm like, you need to hurry up and get a job, because you without a job is going to put pressure on you. You getting a job, he's going to do Uber Eats and driving around so he can still do his photos and videos. But really, to me, that's just buying him time to be able to finance his dream. And so, like I tell people, I just be like, man, the Girl Scouts do not want to sell cookies, but they selling cookies to finance the dream. And really, the finance is buying you time, because once you graduate, your parents going to expect you to start fending for yourself, paying your own bills, and people ain't going to treat you like a college student anymore. So, you know, if you can kind of buy yourself time by just figuring out what your basic life requirement needs are, then I think that'll give you an opportunity to focus on and figure out what your dream is. Because if you're making decisions because of pressure, then you're never going to really do what you want to do. So I really be trying to tell everyone about y'all program, not just because y'all on here. I'm like, they got an entrepreneur program. If you got any ideas, you need to start. Like, you need to do it and hurry up and fail so they can correct you on those failures. Because when you get out of school, man, you're going to feel the crunch where, you know, when we first started, man, people laughed at me. All my friends, because they're from Michigan, they got jobs at the plants in engineering and stuff like that. They came out making, who knows, 60, 45, $50,000 an hour. And I came out making $500 when my friend wanted to pay me. I went from having my own apartment in Lansing and East Lansing to living in his basement. And so I was the fool. Like, man, you graduated, you got a college degree, you a dummy. But I was doing what I wanted to do. And so over the years, it was just literally like this gap where my pay came up and theirs probably stayed about the same or what up. But eventually I kind of passed them. And then it became, man, you lucky you get to do what you want to do. I hate my job. I'm trying to figure out what career I want to do and all this stuff. So the adage of when people tell you to find something that you would be willing to do for free, I mean, I was on campus doing the cultural vibe at 88.9. Nobody was paying us to do that radio station. We would go up there every Friday night from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and do that show. We would prep for the show all week. I was doing promotions with a friend of mine for all the record labels throughout the Midwest. So I would be in Ann Arbor, Chicago, Toledo, and I wasn't getting paid. And I was listening to all that music and subscribing to the Source and Vibe. So I already was doing it for free and I loved it. So when it became an opportunity to do it, I was like, $500 a month sound good to me. I'll just kind of make it do what it do. But they looked at me like I was the dummy. And now people be like, you lucky, you don't have to go to work. You get to do what you want to do. And I hate this job and I'm trying to get out the factory. So, you have an opportunity when you're young. The older you get, the more responsibilities you're going to have. And the more responsibilities you have, the less time you have. And the less time you have, the less options you're going to have to kind of do what you want to do. So, figure it out, man, and give yourself a shot and do it now.
Well, that's it. Entrepreneurship was probably in a different stage then, and it's still not even too long ago. People were, parents and others were looking at saying, hey, you're not taking this job. What are you doing? And you and I have talked about this. Athletes, what a great spot for student athletes to become entrepreneurs, because those are the assertive, the go-getter individuals, that really should get into this, and there's not a lot of time to do it. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I've talked to several of the groups, football players, basketball players, others. You're on the inside. A lot of them I saw were saying, their aspirations to go in the NFL, which they should. They should aspire to go there. But statistically, not many are going to go. But a lot of them didn't have that backup plan, of getting an internship or some type of a job. So, I do think entrepreneurship is a good thing for them to look at.
I mean, the crazy part about it is, Paul, when they do get there, even if they do make it to the league, the first thing they want to do is open up their own business.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, that's the comeback. Okay, I get it. You're going to go to the league. But when you get there, you making money, you need to do something for your money to make money. So, I'm trying to work from the inside. I'm telling these people all the time about you guys or whatever. But yeah, back then that wasn't an option. That wasn't even a career. It wasn't a major, wasn't a minor. Nobody was thinking about, you're going to go do what? So, we lucked up, man.
So you brought up Outkast. Now you didn't just fall into getting Outkast. I mean, how did that happen? Were they very early, or what was it?
Nah, so what it was, we missed their first album, but we've done all the albums since then. So really what it was is, again, I kind of think in terms of bigger things. And so I'm sitting here thinking, like, at that time in 95, I'm like, man, when you think of hip hop or Atlanta hip hop, the first thing you think of is Outkast. There wasn't, Goody Mob hadn't come out, T.I., Jeezy, all these other people. It was Outkast. So whenever you thought about Southern hip hop or Atlanta hip hop, you thought about Outkast. And so I literally sat up there and said, man, they selling like 3 million records. We need to get on them inserts inside the credit, because back then people used to open up the cassettes and the CDs to see where the record was recorded at and who recorded it and who mixed it and who were the session players. So I knew that if we got on that would give us instant credibility. And I knew that they was going to sell millions of records. So we worked on that, the AT-Aliens album, which was their second album. And so how we got them is I found out that the production company, Organized Noise, that they were huge Falcon fans. And so I got a hold of their office manager, Dee, and I offered to take them to the game. And I said, anybody want to go to the game? She was like, well, how many people can we get? I said, whoever want to go. It's all good. We got you. You'd be sitting in the first 2 rows. Like, for real? Yeah, right behind the players' families. All going to go together. So she calls me back and she wants 22 tickets. He wants to come to the studio and pick them up. And I say, anybody that want to go to the game got to come by the studio. Make her do a tour. Like, I'm going to hold the carrot. So here we go. Outkast, Goody Mob, TLC, all these people, that's one camp. They want to go to the game. So we're only 2.5 miles from the Georgia Dome, which was the Georgia Dome at the time. So what ends up happening, they come in, some of them have to use the restroom, some of them chilling in the lounge. I'm showing them the studio. After the game, Falcons win. Everybody got to go back to the studio to get their car. and they started working. We literally did our first session, and we hustled them into that session. So we got them in there working, and we went from there. I mean, that was the hustle. I mean, now, like I keep saying, when you think of it, there's organizations that'll buy suites to entertain their clients so that they can get business. I didn't know what that was called at the time. I'm just like,
but you did it.
yeah, they like the Falcons, and they ain't gonna come up here on their own, and I can get them to come up here and blah, blah, blah. So that's how we built our relationship. And then they was infatuated with meeting a professional. For me, I had played and grew up with Bob, but to them, this is our first round draft pick. He's the highest paid NFL lineman in history. You know what I mean? And he an Atlanta Falcon, he only 19 to 20 years old. We want to meet Big Bob. And so, you know, typically the athletes want to be artists and the artists want to be athletes. And so they both want to meet each other. And it just played out. And so like we literally went from Outkast to Goody Mob to Society of Soul to TLC to 112 to everybody you can imagine of, because when that album came out, we were listed on pretty much every song that Outkast, and they like, well, if Outkast can get this type of sound, we want this type of sound, and they wanted to work with us, and that's what gave us our credibility.
Wow, that's a cool story. Now, at that time, in 20 tickets or so, that had to be expensive. Were you in a place where you could get that, or you got it from helping with Bob?
Bob was the highest paid lineman in the NFL.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Bob gave out all the tickets. Them tickets was, at the time, their face value was $125 each.
Yeah.
And then he gave, you know, the guys, you know, Organized Noise, Rico got a jersey, Big Boy got a jersey. I mean, we did what we had to do. If they wanted footballs, it wasn't no big deal. I mean, we did what we needed to do. And so that became what we did. Every Sunday, they wanted to go to the game. And we was like, cool. And so, you know, at the game, you build a different relationship. And so they know all that stuff now. So, you know, if we call them and be like, we're working on our 25th anniversary, they remember all those times, you know what I mean, what we did, and they quick to pick up the phone. So it's kind of like, you know, like family, you know, and then we got other relationships where the guy who's T.I.'s business partner, he used to work at our front desk. And then like a lot of our engineers for Usher, Monica, YG, and all this stuff. And so I always look at the studio as like an institution, and I always say the success of the institution is based on the success of its alumni. So we're always trying to graduate people out of the studio and push them along to do great things. And then we don't worry about them leaving, because we're capable of training people, you know, of taking them. And so that's one of the things that I noticed about a lot of other businesses. They don't have the patience to teach people. They just rather pluck people from us, but they don't have the patience to sit to the side and let the girl mess up 30 times and keep working with them. So that's why I said we're blessed. We're the source. You know, my style of management is, I always hear people say that I don't ask people to do anything that I wouldn't do on my own. Well, I always say that I don't ask people to do anything that I haven't already done. I like to be done, read it, tried it, done it. So then if I ask somebody else to do it, they can't BS me and tell me, well, Curtis, I didn't put the podcast up this week because it took too long. Well, I've done a whole season of 52 episodes. I know it only takes 10 minutes. So my style is to go through it, become the expert, and then again, translate it into whatever language you speak in so that you can become an expert at it. And that's kind of like how I like to roll and how we roll at the studio. So we've been labeled as kind of like an institution. You know, y'all saw me put on my varsity jacket. We have Patchwerk alumni varsity jackets for people that worked here as well. And we have a crew event. Well, this will be the first year for 25 years, our Christmas party. We basically set it up. If anybody ever worked at the studio, they come and bring a guest. If they work there now, they bring a guest. And if they friends and family. So we typically, you know, throw our Christmas party, have about 160 people there. And that's where we all kind of get back together and stuff like that.
So going back to that night that you brought them in, did you happen to know that was going to be a big night? Did you take pictures, do any video? Do you have anything from that?
We have some pictures that's been in, like I'm on an Outkast documentary, and it's a long time ago, and I hadn't seen it in years. And then when I think MTV kind of did a special, they hit us up and they used one of the pictures of the guys together in the studio, and it's been circulated on different magazines and stuff like that. But hell no, we was in there worried about if the tape machine was going to work and, they wanted to smoke and we didn't allow smoking in the room and finding a place for them to smoke and pool tables and snacks and runners. And so we was just grinding. And like I tell people, man, they joke on me all the time because really technically my hours now are from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. But, I may roll in there around 10:15, 10:20 and be out of there by 1:30. And I always tell them, yeah, but man, when we first started, I was working 16 hours a day. I mean, I put the work in. We put the work in, and we worked hard, and probably no less than I would say no less than at least 20 times. Bob, was just going to close the studio down. I mean, it was very hard. We were in his pocket, and it took me took like 3.5, 4 years to get out of his pocket. And one of the things I tell people that are entrepreneurs or starting a business, you always hear that most of the businesses fail within the first 3 years, but they never explain to you why. And I'll tell you why. Because if you have a business and you need to borrow any money or do any financing, the longest terms that they typically give you are 36 months, which are 3 years. And so your first 3 years, all the money that you are making, you paying these leases, we had to lease our phone system, a fax machine, all of our equipment and vending machines. So all the money that you bringing in, you literally paying all these leases. Now, if you can make it past 36 months, guess what? All that money that was going out, you can keep and you can kind of establish yourself. So I literally learned firsthand why businesses don't make it past 36 months because won't nobody loan you any money for longer than 36 months. And then you can't get money from banks. So you're dealing with these finance companies that got higher interest rates and higher late fees. And it's hard to make it. So for us, that was my goal. Like Bob kept trying to close the studio and I would be like, well, what do I have to do in order for you to allow us to stay open? And he might be like, man, if you can get 6 bookings and make $5,500, I ain't gonna shut it down. And like I told people, instead of, I know what some people would have done, if they would have got that talk, they would have started sending out their resume and trying to figure out how to leave. I just started figuring out like how I'm gonna buy more time. And then at one point it clicked in my head, was like, man, well shit, if I can get out of his pockets, I will never lose my job. Like nobody can fire me and I'll be here forever. So, after the 3rd or 4th year, I started to be able to pay all the bills and make money and pay myself. And we got out of his pocket. And then we were doing so well. And I didn't understand business at the time, but I remember Bob took about 30 of us to Aruba and paid for everything. And it was because we had made too much money and we needed to spend it, right? Otherwise he was gonna pay taxes. I learned that later. So we was just living a good life. We were working, we owned all of our equipment, we were leasing the building. And so we were covering our expenses. And then we decided we want to build a world-class facility, like some food. So we built this, we moved into this, our building now is like, it's like somebody offered me $7 million a couple of weeks ago and I didn't even take the meeting. So we built this, I think we spent about 3.3 million building one room and we got about 4 or 5 rooms. And so what that did is it reset the clock. And like, it was kind of like I tell people, it was like playing a football game and running all the way down to the goal line. And when you get there, they say, turn around, because I felt like I had got to the point where we would never go out of business because we was making enough money and we owned everything. So this reset, we bought a $1.1 million console. We bought some $76,000 speakers. We spent $370,000 on outboard gear. We spent $110,000 on the drawing of the studio. And then we spent $1.3 million on the people to do the construction. And so now all that little extra money that we went to Aruba with, he was like, you're not going to see a lot of money in the bank account, get used to it. And it just dropped. And so every month you back into that place where you were before, wondering how you going to pay it. And Bob, we need a little bit of extra money from you. And now you're getting that threat of, I'm tired of this, I'm going to shut it down. So all my security was gone. And it's a humbling place to, I don't like to owe anybody $2, let alone owe somebody 3.3 million. And it takes a hell of a stomach to sit up there and deal with clients and act like you ain't tripping when you owe these people a whole bunch of money. And so it just was it's like, you kind of felt a certain way, you did what you had to do and you got out of that. And as soon as you start celebrating, the coach is like, turn around and run it again. And we literally still running that race, man. We got 2026. I refinanced our note. And being honest with y'all, I refinanced $2 million in 2018 and put it on a 10-year note. And we're paying an extra $3,000 on the principal. So we'll be done paying this bank off in 2026. And we're paying them $25,000 a month. So imagine how much money we're going to be able to save when we don't have to pay these people. It's going to change the game. And so when we had some people coming asking about buying the place, I'm like, man, we've been hustling and grinding for 25 years, and I literally can see the finish line. You think I'm going to sell this to you now? We done made it. We done struggled this far. We're going to see this out, and we think we'll have an opportunity to change all of our kids and family members' lives when we own the real estate. You know what I mean? So that's what we're trying to do.
Well, it's got to be tough to stay up to date with technology and changes in technology. I mean, you brought up cassettes, even from there of, where it goes. I'm sure when CDs come out, people are like, these are it. And then that changes everything to digital. And I pulled some names here of just a few of your lists, from Outkast, Mariah Carey, Jay-Z, Ludacris, Tupac. I mean, the list is crazy. So how do you know, when new individuals come out? I mean, are they all reaching out to you? You're reaching out to them? How does that work? And how do you know? I mean, it's probably tough to know if they're gonna be big. How's that work?
Yeah, so for us, it's kind of like when we first started, we just did direct marketing directly to the record labels, the artists and the producers and the A&Rs. After 20, like I said, once you on the album, you just named all them people, right? So if you look at a Mariah Carey CD, a Usher, a Sierra, a Sting, a Annie Lennox, a Whitney Houston, a Jeezy, whoever you want, you look at that CD and see that they worked at the studio. We literally had credibility since 1995. And so typically the way it works for us, people call us. We don't really call anybody. So for us, just to give you an idea, we work 7 days a week, and our typical days start at 10 a.m., no later than 10. So our first session usually starts at 10 a.m. And we usually do 11 to 13 different sessions a day across our 4 or 5 rooms. And we usually finish between 5 and 6 a.m. every morning, 7 days a week. And so we do a lot. And so they'll usually call us, and, they'll say, hey, we want to do a session, and we got to figure out who the artist is and what are they doing. Are they recording? Are they mixing? Do they want to master? Right now, we kind of got to tell them we limit the studio to 4 people. Normally, we might have 20 to 30 people in sessions. We got big rooms. And then we try to figure out what are they doing. And then if they're bringing their own engineer, typically we provide them with the engineer. But if they're bringing their own, we'll have an assistant, and we'll get the engineer's number and kind of talk to him and get an idea of what his setup is. So it's a lot of work that goes in before. When we doing those Mariah Carey sessions, they sending us a rider. Like, like her, I'll tell you a story. So it was funny. But
I want to hear a story.
It's funny, but it wasn't funny. So Mariah, they basically booked our whole studio and told people they didn't want anybody at the back desk. So they booked the A room, the B room, our mastering room, production room, and said, we don't really want anybody in the building except for management, right? So they booked our room 15-hour blockouts for 2 weeks, or a week, I think it was. And so then they like, okay, they send over a rider, and it's 2 pages long of all the stuff. We had to rent this $200,000 piano. So we rent the piano, we put it in a room, we have to have the people tune it on site. Because after you move it, it gets out of tune. So we get it delivered, set it up, 9-foot grand piano, we bring the person into it. She got Randy from American Idol, Jimmy Jam from Jam and Lewis, and a couple of engineers, all these big people. And they would show up to the studio every day. And Mariah wouldn't walk into that building until 1 a.m. every day, right? So one of the things she had on her rider was some wine. And so I live about 30 minutes north of the studio, and we had runners, and our managers kept saying, we can't find this wine in the store out here. And I got a Total Wine by me. So I'm like, well, man, shit, if she want a case, they like, yeah, she want a case of this wine. And I was like, I'll just pick the shit up and bring it in. Man, that wine was like, cost me about $2,300, right? And I'm like, what the, because I went in, they had it in the back room, and it hurt me, man. I'm like, man, I ain't had no $2,300 to be getting reimbursed. So we took it to her, right? So here's the thing, right? So all these people before y'all don't know this. So they was, I ain't gonna say a lot of stuff. So certain artists, what I tell people is when they get so much money from the label is waiting on them to put out an album. So if you see Janet Jackson get all this money, they waiting to get that money back from the album. When they gave Mariah all that money, they trying to get an album out of her, but Mariah ain't pressing. So they literally trying to get this album out of Mariah. So they end up flying all the executives from Def Jam to Atlanta. And so the day before, these two people come over and they meet with me. Did you get the writer? You know, we go over everything, 2 pages, M&Ms, candy, wine, this. So, man, I get a call, you know, like the next day. And he's like, Curtis, can we get together and meet? I want to talk to you. And I'm like, yeah, how'd everything go? He's like, well, Mariah wanted these flute glasses to drink the champagne out of, and you guys didn't have them. And I said, well, was it on the writer? He's like, no. I said, what the fuck you want me to do, right? So he was like, the guys wouldn't got them, no. And then I said, I'm thinking about all the shit on that writer, the piano, the engineers, the tuning, all the shit we've been doing, all this they've been stressing me out over. And I said, okay, what else is it? He's like, man, the vending machine took my, I said, get out of my office, man. We delivered, like we literally delivered. And I remember I seen a grown woman cry, like Mariah was in there arguing about her album cover. And she wanted to use a certain photographer and the label had chosen it and it was supposed to go to Walmart. Mariah tried to call Walmart and push the day back. And they like, it doesn't work like that, Mariah. You can't just, the day before, we have an exclusive cover for Walmart and you added a song on there. And so they was going through a lot. And man, Mariah wasn't showing up till 1. Now she would stay till 10 o'clock, but she wouldn't show up till 1 o'clock. So all of these big name people would just be sitting in the studio waiting on her. And
to be a fly on the wall, I'm sure that's one of many stories.
yeah. So it's, like I said, creative people, they need to be in a space where they feel comfortable enough to be creative. And that's what we provide at the studio. And so, you know, there's a lot that it takes to get these people to the studio and make them comfortable and get them records out of them. And once they get the records, you know, that's how they get their money back.
That's awesome. Well, let me get into, so we have a lot of students that always talk about wanting to start a studio or get into music and different things. And we had a question come up from one of the audience members. Looks like they own a recording studio. They're looking to open up a second location in 2021. They said, besides music, what other areas would you recommend they look into?
I mean, for us, we do a lot of all of our stuff is, like I said, we do our core business, but anything outside of the core, there's like an educational foundation to it. So we have another brand called I Do Music. And besides music, we do podcasts. We also do workshops where we bring in experts and, you know, we might have 35, 40 students that come in. We do voiceover work and we do ADR. So ADR is when they, like if Ludacris is doing Fear Factor and they tape something and they need to replace some audio, we'll be able to hook the computer up and they can look at the scenes and read to it right then. And then we do a lot of, you know, people do a lot of filming for reality shows here in Atlanta. And yeah, and those are some other areas. And then, you know, people, you know, book it through the videos, photo shoots. We've had a wedding. So what we ended up doing probably like about 2 years ago is I literally like created some tags and stuff on Google and all that stuff as an event facility. And so we look at it kind of like, you know, we may do a kid's birthday party and they get to record and walk away with some music. Like I said, we did a wedding and stuff like that. So I think if you kind of look at your place as a facility, and like what I tell people, they be like, man, you be coming with all kind of ideas like master classes and all this stuff. And I just tell them, man, I'm just creating events to book the time. Like if I'm going to do this Type 32 contest, then I'm going to get enough people to pay me $25 to cover our fee for the hourly rate. And to me, it's just an event. So it doesn't matter to me whether we're doing music, whether we're doing film, where we having a meeting or a workshop, a birthday party or whatever. I've kind of, you know, taken the approach that we're an event facility. And so when people are doing events, you know, we do a lot of movie work where people, you know, look at scenes and stuff like that. So if you just pigeonhole yourself into a recording studio, then that's all you ever going to be able to do. I was talking to a gentleman today in DMV about his studio, and I tell people, for me, we look at studios in 3 different classes. We look at like a home range studio, a mid-range studio, and a world-class facility, and there are different expectations at every level. So like a home range studio would be a studio that's not in a commercial building. It's at home, and typically the rates are anywhere from $35 to $55 an hour or so, $50, $60 an hour. A mid-range facility would be in a building, a commercial building or something, and the price range would probably be anywhere from $75 to $125 an hour. And then a world-class facility would be anywhere from $135 to $200 an hour. And where I tell people where they get into a problem with the studios is that if they're billing like a world-class facility, but providing a mid-range facility service, that's when you get it wrong. So wherever you at, you just gotta figure out what your strengths are and what you can provide to the people. And then you need to price yourself accordingly and make promises accordingly, and don't overstate what you can do. And so like the dude today, he was charging, I think, $50 an hour, but he was charging like $300 to master a song, and we don't even charge that much. And so you got to kind of do your homework and learn, what you can, you can charge this much for a mid-range car, a big car, SUV, and you got to fit in there. And if he's on here, I think they tagged me, but in my Instagram bio, there's a link, and I do free consultations. You can click on it and schedule time, and I'd be happy to help you. I love helping smaller studios and people get started out because they dogged me out when I was in that position. So I'm scarred up, and I'm trying to help y'all win.
So, what's interesting about that is, like I said, a lot of students and others want to start their own studios, but to me, it kind of seems like you got to have that hit or that win. And to me, it kind of looks like almost being like a sports agent. You're taking kind of bets on getting who's going to hit it, who's going to go big, who's going to go to the league. I mean, is it kind of like that? If you start a studio,
nah, you
got to hit her.
You literally just need to provide a service. Like, it ain't, so for us, like I keep saying, people come in there and they see, we probably got about 200 or 300 plaques, right? But what I keep telling them, like you said before, Ludacris wasn't Ludacris, T.I. wasn't T.I., Lil Jon wasn't Lil Jon, Sierra was just a teenager. We didn't know who they were. So our success is not determined on the outcome of the artist. We just need to be able to provide a service where these people feel comfortable enough. And so a lot of things about the studio is the vibe. Like, do we feel comfortable? Do we feel rushed? Do we have everything that we need so that we can create? And these artists want to be in a creative space. It's just like, sometimes you just go to, like a lot of times in college, people may not hang out at the guy on the team's house who keeps it the cleanest. They want to go to the dude that just lets you throw everything everywhere, so you can just be comfortable and you kind of create a vibe. So, I wouldn't, like, for us, we don't really have any marketing material that's targeted towards established artists. We're always marketing and promoting and going towards up and coming independent artists. And so that's what I wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to get the big people in there, because the big people, they already kind of probably got a place or whatever. But, I think you just got to kind of, we was talking earlier, you need a mechanism where, no one's going to promote you. So you need to be able to talk about your services and what you do and the value add that you can add to people and the quality of your product and your service. So it doesn't matter what the business is, you better have some type of social media, some marketing, and be able to sell your services. And if you don't know, what you up against, it's hard to sell. So it's like, like I keep saying, we didn't know anything, but I just read regular books. I didn't have to read a studio book. I'm like, I told somebody today, anytime I see somebody successful, I immediately try to find if they got a YouTube page. And I sit there and be like, they gonna tell their secrets. Or if they got a book. I just ordered this book, man. It was written in 1930 from the dude who wrote the Federal Reserve System. I was reading another book and they said he wrote a book. And I was like, the psychology makes me want to try to get an understanding of what the hell was he thinking and what was his mindset. So as an entrepreneur and a studio owner or a business owner, you better be curious and you better be paying attention to what other people are doing to be successful and figure out how to apply it to your business. You know what I mean? I be looking at everything, man. I look at Delta, I look at Michigan State. I was like, you know, I was looking at colleges and I was like, what businesses be around for the longest? And I said, man, these universities be around for hundreds of years. It ain't a lot of other industry that be around hundreds of years, and it's a whole bunch of them. And then I started trying to figure out what do they have in common. And I was like, people can borrow money to go to them. And then I started looking at other businesses and I was like, people can borrow money to get a house. They can borrow money to get a car. I said, well, shit, we need to have financing. So I ended up setting up financing where we have financing for all of our services. I figured it out. I called the company. They didn't believe me. They sent somebody to make sure we was a brick and mortar. I had to give them a tour, show them our books and what we were doing. And now we got a Patchwerk music card. We call our program is Work Now, Pay Later.
That's
And come in,
real smart.
you know, financial studio time. And so, like I said, when I look at all the business, you can finance your laptop. They got financing for rims. They got financing for everything. So we the only studio that I know in the country that do financing. But in my mind, that was me trying to find the lowest common denominator of these great institutions. And I was like, these kids wouldn't go there if they couldn't get a loan. You know, so that, you know, that's an example of looking at somebody else, but then trying to reduce it down to the lowest common denominator. And then, like I said, once I got out of the universities, then I start seeing like, this is what all the other successful people have in common. You can borrow money to do business with them.
That's very smart, very smart. Well, I know we're about to get to the end here, but I got to give you a couple minutes to talk about the game this weekend. We got to talk about the game a little bit. You had your varsity jacket on and Instagram.
Yeah, you know, I was telling you, so one of my friends, so here's the deal. So when we were going through the coaching thing, so our assistant AD, Alan Haller, me and him played together. And so, you know, I've been involved in helping out with the program for a long time. I'm the reason why Rich Homie Quan was in the locker room. We had some type of way. I'm the reason why we had a special Spartan song and some of the cool things that we do that, you know, just, you know, blessed to be able to have a relationship with D'Antonio and Alan and the AD and our president and stuff. So I was in the locker room and on the field at the Rose Bowl. I brought Rich Homie in there when he was dancing with this and all this stuff. And so anyway, when they announced that we hired Coach Tucker, I got a call from Alan from the tarmac. Like when they literally went to go pick him up from Colorado. And so I had the heads up on our coach. And so I'm like, okay, my other homeboy is the defensive line coach for the Cardinals right now. He went to Clemson and he helped Tucker get a job as the defensive coordinator for the Bears. So I'm trying to figure out somebody that got Coach Tucker's number. And I'm telling Alan on the phone, all right, man, y'all got the coach. We need to bring Courtney in. But he's like, man, you know, we trying to get HB back first because he was at Florida State. But, you know, I'm going to put in, I said, look, man, I don't care if you got to do special teams. We need Hawk to be coaching there, and that's Courtney Hawkins. And so, you know, I ended up I ain't told nobody this, so because I don't do one whatever. So anyway, I gave Courtney Coach Tucker's number. He's calling him. He ain't answering. And then he called me 3 days later about it. I said, man, Courtney, this is your job. If you don't get the job, that's because you got too much pride to keep calling these people. I said, there's other people trying to get that job. This is your job. Call him, text him, don't get it. He called back that day and Tucker picked up the phone.
You said Courtney's from Flint, right?
Yeah, he picked up the phone and actually he called him back and told Courtney, I'd be honored that he didn't even interview him. He said, I'd be honored if you join our coaching staff. And so what I know is, like I tell people, I played with Courtney and, you know, we used to run multiple plays over and over when they would mess up. So I knew the play. I'm a defensive back here receiver. I know the route he about to run and what he's supposed to do, and I still couldn't stop him. You know, Courtney's like 5'9" and played about 10 or 11 years in the NFL. And what I tell people, like Musin and Plexico, they big, they physical, they can use their bodies. Courtney is a technician, so he has techniques to slap your hands away. If you watch that game, you would see our receivers get on top of the DB and then they would slow down and the DB would slow down, then they would accelerate and be open and catch bombs. And so he has all these techniques. And so being that I went to school with him, he used to come to our dorm room. I used to kick it with him when he played with the Steelers. I used to go up to Pittsburgh. He came to Atlanta a ton of times, went to his bachelor party. His wife lived on 2 West. We friends. I know his kids. I know what type of person we have on the sideline. So after the first game, I wasn't worried about it because I said he got too much pride in himself and his family to let these people do it. So as you guys watch the season, pay attention to our receivers and think back to when did we have 3 receivers in the top 10 of the Big Ten in receiving. And so building a relationship with Coach Tucker, I did a piece that I put out earlier in the summer where I set up a meeting with the Spartan Dogs and we did a call and we recorded a clip and put it out. It probably had about 100,000, whatever. So getting to know him and meet him, I knew what type of men we had in that locker room and I wasn't worried about it. So, people after the first game was talking about we hired the wrong person and we ain't gonna win, we're gonna go 1-8. But the people that know the people that's in that room, we're not really worried about it, man. We're gonna have a great season. You know what I mean?
It makes you look forward to the rest of the year. I mean, that was an exciting game. That was huge. So, I know we had a couple questions in here too, and we can go over a little bit here. I think some people have asked you, and we don't want to give away, your contact info. But people asking how do they get a hold of you? Is it Instagram?
I'm that type of person. So on me, my email is Curtis at Patchwerk, and it's CURTIS at Patchwerk, PATCHWERK. And then, like I said, if you my office number you can call, but it's best to just schedule an appointment with me. So, like I said, on Instagram, my name is Fritty Loc, FRITTYLOC. And if you click the link in my bio, I have a meeting link that you can schedule a call, a Zoom call, or in-person meeting, and I'll be happy to talk to you. I got no problem. And just put in there that you say you're from Michigan State, I'm really going to jump over and above. And if you say you was on this call, then we got something in common. But anybody from Michigan State, I'm going to take the call or the meeting. And I kind of, that's my style. We don't have voicemail at the studio because we're not running from anybody. We take all our phone calls. We don't owe anybody money, so we not hide from people. So if you call up to the studio and I'm there, I'm going to get on the phone. I'm usually there from 10 to 2, but a lot of times I'm in a meeting doing a consultation. So it's easier if you just book a time. And if you don't want to book a time, you got my email address. Just in the subject, put that, you was on this call and you had a question, and I'll be happy to help you.
Got it. Gotcha. Curtis, this is awesome. I want to hear so many more stories, so we're going to have to talk more after this. And love the trajectory, love the career, love everything you've done. And thank you so much for your help this year of being an EIR. I know we're going to still be in touch quite a bit. Let us know how we can help too. And thank you for giving people your information out there and them reaching out. So any last words?
Yeah, I just want to, like I said, man, I'm not a dream killer. I'm the biggest dream chaser that you can imagine. And so I want to encourage anyone out there that if you got any ideas, try them. If you need help, reach out to me. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. The business is still a business. You're in school and you guys have a ton of resources, and I'm one of them. Your alumni are some of your resources, and they'll be happy to help you. Even if they're not, I am. So it doesn't matter, with this program, like you said, I've helped people that got hair care products, that are doing festivals, that are doing outdoor advertising. A business is a business is a business, and all these businesses stand on a certain foundation, so they need to be set up a certain way, and I can help you with that. And I get it. You know what I mean? So if anybody needs any help, I encourage you to call me or email me and take advantage of it. And and don't just do it once. Like if we do talk, I'm gonna answer all your questions, but then you're gonna go back and start working on something, and you're gonna get stuck again. Book another appointment and let's build a relationship and let's get it done. Hurry up and fail. Chase your dreams, man, because when you get out of school, you ain't gonna have no time to chase them dreams, buddy.
Well, thanks, Curtis. Really appreciate it. And go green, man. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Y'all have a good evening.
The Hatchcast is sponsored in part by Spartan Innovations. Spartan Innovations provides startups spinning out of MSU's ecosystem the commercialization, support, and financial resources necessary to turn MSU research technologies into successful Michigan businesses.
Hatchcast is an ongoing
Hatchcast.
Hatchcast is an ongoing collaboration.
This podcast was co-created
By Aaron Richard, Tyler Mihai,
And Kurt Krieger.
It is produced by the Burgess Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation,
in cooperation with the MSU
Foundation.
Gabe Hales,
And Justice Keach are our sound engineers and
editors. Our co-producers include Brandon Weaver,
Gabe Hales.
Justice Keach and Aaron Richard.
Original sound is created by Katya Gaudina,
With help from Aubrey Haas,
Brandon Weaver,
Caitlin Setter,
Sydney Owinga,
Kurt Krieger, Tyler Mihai,
Gabriella Alum,
Jeff Smith,
Paul Jakes, Ken Smusiak.
Desiree Melfi-Bozo,
Neil Kane,
and Lori Fisher.
If you have any questions or comments, please
Please feel free to reach out at
Hatchcast@msu.edu.
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 Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.